Let me get to John. Luke won't quite do it. It was just before the Passover festival. Jesus knew that the hour had come for him to leave this world and go to the Father. But having loved his own who were in the world, he loved them to the end. The evening meal was in progress, and the devil had already prompted Judas, the son of Simon Iscariot, to betray Jesus. Jesus knew that the Father had put all things under his power, and that he had come from God and was returning to God. So he got up from the meal, took off his outer clothing, wrapped a towel around his waist. After that, he poured water into a basin and began to wash his disciples' feet, drying them with the towel that was wrapped around him. He came to Simon Peter, who said to him, "Lord, are you going to wash my feet?" Jesus replied, "You do not realize now what I am doing, but later you will understand." "No," said Peter, "you shall never wash my feet." Jesus answered, "Unless I wash you, you have no part with me." "Then, Lord," Simon Peter replied, "not just my feet, but my hands and my head as well." Jesus answered, "Those who have had a bath need only to wash their feet. Their whole body is clean, and you are clean, though not every one of you." For he knew who was going to betray him. That was why he said, "Not every one of you was clean." When he had finished washing their feet, he put on his clothes and returned to his place. "Do you understand what I have done for you?" he asked them. "You call me teacher and Lord, and rightly so, for that is what I am. Now that I, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you also should wash one another's feet. I have set you an example that you should do as I have done for you. And very truly I tell you, no servant is greater than his master, nor is a messenger greater than the one who sent him. Now, if you know these things, be blessed if you do them. A new command I give you: love one another. As I have loved you, so you must love one another. And by this, everyone will know that you are my disciples, if you love one another." The word of God for the people of God. Thanks be to God. Well, the prophets may have called them beautiful, at least when they belong to those who bring good news to others. But on the whole, most of us would probably agree that when it comes to parts of the body which are not usually thought of as all that lovely, our feet are pretty high up on that list. We hear of folks having great legs or beautiful hair or stunning eyes. When have we ever heard of someone being attracted to another person because they had neat feet? There are no People's Choice pedicures or Hollywood Hang 10 awards. Because feet are not only funny looking, they're often crooked and ugly, sometimes even smelly. They're practical, to be sure, but appealing, no way. So just imagine dealing with not just your feet, but with somebody else's feet. Think about how you would like to wash that person's feet, to peel off the mud and dirt that was caked onto their heels, maybe even between their toes. Not very inviting. But it's understandable why that particular job, the job of washing feet, always fell to the lowest servant of any household. You know, the last hired, first fired fellow with no seniority. Only someone really desperate for a job would quite literally stoop to take this job. All of which is what makes this little incident in John 13 so completely unheard of, even rather radically disturbing. For on his last night on earth, that is exactly what Jesus did. He got up during the meal, took off his outer clothing, wrapped a towel around his waist, and then got down on his knees and began to wash the feet of his disciples. And it was so unexpected, so unheard of, so unlordlike, that when Jesus came to Simon Peter, the fisherman crossed his arms and he said rather emphatically, "You will never wash my feet." You see, in Peter's mind, washing feet was really not the kind of thing which a man like Jesus ought to be doing. But Jesus took on the servant's role anyway. He got down and he got dirty, doing the task which rightfully belonged not to a king, not to a lord, even to a rabbi, to one at the very bottom of that societal totem pole. So we have to ask ourselves, why would he do this? Verse 3, for instance, makes it patently clear that Jesus was far from uncertain about his own status or his own identity. He knew that the Father had given all things into his hands and that he had come from God and was going back to God. So Jesus was not having an identity crisis when he stooped down to wash his disciples' feet. Rather, Jesus washed their feet not because he had to, but because, as verse 1 tells us, having loved his own who were in the world, he loved them to the end. That's a hard task for most of us. We can put up with folks for a while, even if they start to be a bit finicky. But loving someone to the end, that's a different matter. When we don't get affirmation from our relationship with someone, or when the other person is perhaps even spiteful towards us, it is tempting indeed to just give up on them. We can understand it if Jesus, who knew that his hour had come to depart from this world, had been just a little preoccupied on that evening with what was about to happen to him, so much so that he didn't really have time to put up with the petty squabbles of the disciples who were still arguing about who's going to sit in the places of honor, on the right hand or on the left hand, when it came time for the meal. Who would have blamed Jesus had he told all those disciples to just shut up and sit down? But he didn't. Instead, without fanfare, he just got up and took the servant's role to wash their feet. Because to put it in the simplest of terms, Jesus wanted those determined to be dense disciples to understand that real love and real faith, and especially real leadership, means one thing and one thing only. It means servanthood. Many years ago, while serving in our first appointment in Brazoria, we met a delightful woman named Ori Shaw. I never knew exactly what her background was, what she'd done in her life. The time we met her, she was already in her early 70s. It was Miss Ori who introduced us to the whole idea of reflexology. She believed that every part of your foot was biologically tied to some other part of your body. And so if you knew which part to rub on your foot, you could cure a headache or a stomach ache or a backache, maybe mental illness. We were a little skeptical of Miss Ori. I had a friend who was a liturgical dancer who came to see us one day and did a beautiful, beautiful dance in the worship service. And afterwards, Ori came up and said, "I would love to get my hands on her feet." I thought, okay, Ori, that's a little creepy. But Ori was right. Even without understanding the science of it all, we discovered that rubbing someone's foot can indeed be therapeutic sometimes. In fact, when we were getting together the basins over here, for those that would like to do foot washing, it's certainly an option if you want to. If you don't want to, you don't have to. But if you want that, one of our folks said, I have a Dr. Scholl's tub at home, and it has therapeutic jets in it and massage. And I thought, that would be the one everybody would actually go to. Serving God by serving others, about touching them in some way that can bring them genuine joy or actual comfort. So just as he had told them earlier, now Jesus showed them, I am among you as one who serves. That's what we ought to remember about Jesus the most. 2,000 years later, nothing really has changed about what real love is and how Jesus calls us to manifest it to others. See, if you want to follow Jesus, the simple truth is that the line starts at the rear. Jesus said, "A new commandment I give you, that you love one another." That novum mandatum in Latin is the expression from where the term Maundy, Thursday, comes. If we want to know just what following Christ means, the mandate, the mandatum, makes it clear. It means being willing to serve other people, even if not just their feet, but their whole manner of being makes them genuine stinkers. You know the saying, you have to kiss a lot of frogs before you can get a prince. You may have to wash a lot of feet before you can really understand the astounding love of our King. See, verse 35 reminds us, it is by this that everyone will know that we are Christ's disciples, not by the foot washing, by the sharing and showing of love one for the other. People will recognize we are real in this whole faith business only if we actually love each other. I've been in churches where they didn't much even care for each other. I had a church once where the lay leader and the president of the United Methodist Women were not on speaking terms for 2 years. It was worse because they were a brother and sister. So I finally called them both into my office. I said, well, we can't do this in our church. We need you to sort of make up. And do you know that they, for the first time in 2 years, agreed on something? They both agreed that they were mad at me. Glad to do what I can to sort of bring people back together. But sometimes in churches, we don't act like we love each other. Sometimes in the broader Christian community, we don't act like we love each other. And sometimes people who need love the most outside of the Christian community don't feel that we even care for them. On this Maundy Thursday, the question before us is really quite simple. Are we keeping Christ's mandate, that new commandment, to love each other? Yeah, feet are not very glamorous, but they can tell us a lot about who is here to be served and who has come to serve. And as the prophet of old once told us, they can even be beautiful if they belong to those who bring good news. If you know these things, Jesus said, you will be blessed if you do them.